Welcome to the ESSER annual reporting webinar. Today's webinar will be focused on the Phase 1 data collection. We will go over the overall timeline, but the bulk of the presentation will be about Phase 1. So again, like I mentioned, we're going to go through the overall timeline for this year's reporting. We are reporting on fiscal year 22 data. So this means expenditures that were made between October 1st and September 30th, 2022. So a simpler way to think of this is everything included in your FY22 EGMS ESSER applications. We're going to walk through the actual Phase 1 reporting requirements. So we're going to look at specifically the questions you'll be asked. And then also talk a little bit about the tactics of like how do you log into the system and what does that look like, just to refresh your memory. So quick background, as you all know, we got a lot of money through the ESSER program, specifically 540 million in total was distributed to LEAs. At this point in time, we have spent about half of that, about 225-ish million. So we have another half to go. As you all know, ESSER 1 CARES ended this past September, ESSER 2 CRESA will be ending this September, and then ESSER 3 ARP will be ending next September. All right, so the overall timeline, we are here in February. We are kicking off the data collection now. So in February, you'll be doing the Phase 1 data submissions. Once that's completed, we'll open the portal for Phase 2. Once that's completed, we'll go through a correction window. So OSSI will look through your data. You obviously should do the same to make sure everything's accurate. There will be a chance to make any corrections that are needed. Once that correction window closes, the LEA leader will need to go into the portal and certify to state that, yes, all this data is accurate. And then we'll do a final look at the data and then submit it to the Department of Education. So that's overall what this looks like. This process is completely unchanged from last year, meaning the actual Phase 1, Phase 2, but also the data that is being asked for is the same as the data that was being asked for last year. To look a little bit more in detail at specific dates, so currently we're in the February 16th through 20 window. We're obviously in the webinar now. There will be another webinar coming up on right after President's Day, the 21st. We're publishing a user guide. It will be available on our website. And note that the IDS portal will be open as of next Monday. I think that should actually say the 21st, because I think the 20th is a holiday. That data will be due on March 7th, and then we'll go through the same process again for Phase 2. So we'll publish, we'll do webinars, we'll publish the user guide, we'll open the IDS portal, and then that data will be due to us on March 21st. The same as last year, the Phase 1 data is a lot of true-false questions and then one narrative question that you'll need to respond to. And then Phase 2 will be more focused on actual expenditure data, so actual dollar values of how much money was spent in different types of categories. So now we're going to focus just on Phase 1. Here's what the overall process looks like. You're going to log into IDS. You can use the same credentials as you used last year. So it will look exactly the same. You're going to log in, download the template. Then you should go on the website, grab the instructional guide. We designed that so you can have it basically next to you and kind of move through step by step of how to do the submission. You'll complete the reporting template and then upload and submit it into IDS. We're estimating that completing the template will take roughly 2 hours, maybe 2.5, between completing and submission. This includes time to actually gather the information. Most of the questions are pretty straightforward, so we don't think this will take too much time, but we also know that the IDS portal will reject any templates if there are any data errors. So if it gets rejected a couple times, that might take you a little bit more time. But overall, this is what your process looks like. So first, logging, oh, sorry. These are the 5 categories in which Ed will be asking for information, and we'll go through each one in more detail a little bit later. So your first step, logging into the IDS portal. Again, same credentials as last year. If you're registered as an LEA finance or grant manager in the all staff application, then you should be good to go. The LEA data manager at your LEA knows how to manage the all staff application. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, no worries. Please just email us at ossi.esser@dc.gov and we will get you situated to make sure you can log into the portal. Once you log in, download the template. you click download with the handy download button, you click template, and it will download straight to your computer. From there, you can go onto our website and grab the instructional guide. You can see the table of contents here. It really should walk you through step by step how to complete uh, each tab of the template that's downloaded, as well as how to upload it and resolve any issues that you might be running into. So let's get into the actual content. What information are you actually going to have to provide? The first is around safe person instruction. And as we go through these, you're going to notice a pattern because almost every question is set up exactly the same. So they will ask you, did you spend ESSER funds on any of these below items? And then it gives you a list. So in the template, what this looks like is this. You'll see the main question across the top. And then here you will just mark true, false. So if you spent money, ESSER money on promoting vaccination, true, false. Consistent, correct mask use. If you spent money on that, you hit true. If you didn't, you hit false. Please note you do have to fill out every cell. So if you didn't spend any ESSER funds on safe in-person instruction, you do still need to go through and hit false for every option. Otherwise, you will get an error and the template will not be uploaded successfully. So again, please make sure you fill out every cell. But yes, just a set of true false questions. So let's move to the next, provide internet access. Again, did you use ESSER funds to provide home internet access for any students? True, false, and then it gives you a list of potential options that you maybe use to provide home internet access. So in the template, this setup is slightly different. So the main question is actually at the front here, and you do need to hit true, false for the main question. So did you use ESSER funds to do this? If you hit true here, then logically, you would need to select true for one of these following options, and then false for all the ones that you didn't spend funds on. Please note, other is actually a required field here. So if other doesn't apply to you, just select false. If it does, you would select true. And then there's another cell that you can't quite see here because it got cut off, but you'll need to describe what the other is. It doesn't need to be a huge long narrative, just a brief description of how you help provide home internet service to students and families. So that's that. Next, re-engaging students. This is specifically about re-engaging students with poor attendance or participation. And again, it gives you a set of options. So you'll notice the pattern. Again, the template looks the same. Over here on this next tab, re-engaging students, the main question written at the top, and then also that you have to respond to here in this column. So if you hit true here, again, on one of the subsequent options, you would also select true and then false for anything you didn't spend money on. If this is set to false, then please make sure you set false to all the other options that are listed here. Again, every cell does need to be filled out or else the template will be rejected. All right, next, allocation of ESSER resources. So this is more applicable to schools that, or to LEAs that have multiple schools. If your LEA does not have multiple schools, then this question becomes not applicable. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But again, this is set up the same way. So the main question here, did you allocate some portion of ESSER funds to schools in this reporting period? True or false? And then the strategy by which you did that, right? So was it a flat amount? Was there a proportionality factor involved? True or false? If you considered multiple options, so for example, you did a flat amount for per school or per pupil, but then layered on top of that a proportional amount for English learners or students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch, you can hit true for multiple options. So that's the first thing to note. The second is that if you are a single site LEA, you can select true here, and then later down, because I'm assuming you would have spent money on your school as the single site, and then down in other, you can also hit true, and then the description can just say, we're a single site LEA or single school LEA. So that's how you would respond to this if that is your situation. And then last but certainly not least, the ARP-ESSER mandatory requirement. So this is the requirement that folks spend at least 20% of their total allocation on ESSER 3 ARP on evidence-based interventions. Those interventions could respond to students' academic, social, and or emotional needs, and should also be used to support those students most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is the one section that will require a little bit of narrative. Here's what this tab looks like. So here the question is written across the top, and then just the options here that you have to respond to. Um, very quickly, in terms of your actual application, I know we asked you on an evidence-based intervention form to list specific interventions. Anything you've listed, we will cross-check to make sure it's listed as true here. Otherwise, that wouldn't make sense. There may also be other interventions that you supported or ran using ESSER funds that you didn't put out that you didn't name specifically in that form in your application, because in the form we only asked for 5. If it's not in the form, but you did spend ESSER money on it, you should still mark it true here, because this is looking in totality at all of your ESSER 3 funds. So after you've marked true, false on all these different options, there is an actual narrative question at the end as well that asks you to describe the activities and interventions that you implemented using ESSER 3 ARP. We're asking that you include in your response identifying which underserved groups were supported by the intervention, the impact of COVID-19 on those students, and then how those interventions address those impacts. This narrative should be all inclusive of everything you mark true to between these columns. So it's actually, let's move to the next slide so you can actually see it. So it's a cell here. You would write it into this Excel cell, and anything that you mark true on in these prior columns over here, you would need to describe in this one narrative. We do recommend that you pull language from your ESSER 3 ARP application as well as your continuing education plan so that you don't need to rewrite stuff that you've already written. There is a 1,500 character limit, so you might need to do some editing, but would recommend that you use those two things as a starting point to fill out this narrative. All right, and that's it for the actual tabs that you need to fill out anything on. This last tab, data elements description, is just a description of the different categories. So if you have a question on like, oh, what does that actually mean? You can reference this tab and take a look, but you don't actually need to fill out anything on this tab. All right, so we'll pre-populate as much as we can. On this particular template, it will be a little bit harder. I think it's just the LEA name that will be able to pre-populate. Um, but in the areas where we can get the data from elsewhere and things like that, we will do our best to do that and not have to ask you for the same thing again. In terms of communication and training, obviously there's this webinar. We'll also be making updates and announcements through the K-12 grants newsletter, and we'll be having webinars as well specifically focused on phase 2. There will be one on March 2nd and then another one, I believe, on March 6th as well. And as always, you're welcome to reach out to us at aussie.esser@dc.gov. You can also reach out to your ESSER grant specialist directly. As well to get a response. If you're not sure who to reach out to, aussie.esser@dc.gov is a surefire way to get to us. Your email is not going into a black hole of an email inbox. That email address is staffed and is checked regularly. And all right. Thank you so much for joining today. If you have any questions, again, you know how to reach us, and we will talk to you soon.